My man, Cody here. Listen, we're going to talk all things Longship and your story, but I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but in some ways, you are lucky to be alive.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. You're not the first one who said that to me. And yeah, I am. I get that.
Like, seriously, like reading the book, and the whole time I'm like, this is actually getting emotional thinking about it, actually, for some reason, knowing who you are. Wow, I didn't expect that one. Knowing who you are and who you've become is a miracle in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's, it's one of the things that we talk about often, which is this idea that there's miracle and tragedy, right? And you have to avail yourself to that notion. You got to be open to it. But it goes without saying that there's a tremendous amount of goodness and positive momentum that can be generated from hardship, and I'm the benefactor of that. I mean, I've gone through a significant amount of stuff in my life, but by the same token, it's brought me here, brought me to you. You and I get to be friends because of this experience, right? I have a community of individuals that I'm surrounded by that are just remarkable men and women, so I am blessed. I mean, there's tragedy in the story without doubt, but by the same token, I don't know, I'm in a good position. I do what I love. I lead with purpose, and I get to hang out with you. So all's good.
Brother, you're an inspiration. So just for context for folks, we will do a proper intro, obviously, but Cody, the author of Longship, writes about his journey on how we create this brotherhood and what he had to overcome to get here. Like, I messaged you several times while reading this book. I'm like, motherfucker, seriously, this is what you've gone through? And I haven't read a full book. Like, I listened to a ton of books, y'all, but I haven't read a full book in, I can't remember when. And I was reading this thing on a regular basis. So, Ultimate Cody, how did we get to where we are now? How did we get here without obviously giving the whole book away, but
yeah.
How did we land here talking to each other?
Well, that's a great question. I went through some experiences in my life. I was born and raised in St. Albert, a suburb of Edmonton, Alberta. And, great town, amazing family. Grew up with an incredible father, an incredible mom. And I had a big brother who most people would kill to have, like I had a big brother who, while I was this strange looking, overweight, pimple-faced kid, I had this brother who was like just the most beautiful guy on earth. Like, he was just a really good looking kid and also charismatic and kind and compassionate and smart and all these things. And, he considered me cool, which went a long way in my life. But, as life has it, sometimes you're going to get curveballs. There's just no way around it. And life is replete with both sides of positive endeavor and tragic circumstance, right? Like, you go through both of these things in your life, and mine came a little early. My mom ended up being on OxyContin because of a car accident, and it robbed her of her life for a long period of time. My dad ended up developing Parkinson's. He was my business partner, and he and I got into stock brokerage. I followed him into that job after completing a degree in psychology. And he was my hero. And I won't say best friend. My dad wasn't my best friend. My dad was my father, like my dad was my dad. And I was blessed to have that. I had this guy who I worked with, who I looked up to tremendously, and he got sick. And then my brother ended up going through his own struggles and circumstances and developing some really, really nasty alcoholism just because of some of the stuff that he was facing internally. And just for some reason, my brother was like a lot of guys out there, realistically, right? Like, this idea of talking about your so-called weaknesses, your struggles, Jesse would have none of that. He just wouldn't tell you because he didn't want to burden you with, that information. He didn't want you to carry it. My dad was the same way. We learned it from my father. My dad was always a pillar of strength, right? Always. And sometimes he didn't need to be, but he just was, and Jesse was the same way. So they never talked about what they were going through. My dad ended up taking a trip to Kelowna, BC, where they used to summer, my dad and mom. And he ended up taking his life in the Okanagan, which was a pretty massive blow to the family because he was, here was this man who had always been, for the entirety of my existence, this rock solid thing, this one concrete thing in my life. My mom had developed this horrible addiction to Oxycontin. Jesse was crumbling, but I still always had my dad to lean on. And when he got sick real fast. I mean, his Parkinson's got really bad really quick. And so when he ended up taking his life, it was left to, me and Mom and Jess to kind of try to push through. And I knew it was on me because I was the only healthy one in the family left. And so I had to show up the way that my dad would for my family. So I continued in being a financial advisor for a while still shouldering dad's loss and trying to carry the burden of trying to help my mom get through Oxycontin addiction, try to get my brother through his alcohol addiction. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Leaving Las Vegas with Nicolas Cage, but it's a hell of a film. And that was my brother. Just this incredible pull for self-destruction. And so, by that time in my life, I also had a newborn child. She was a year old, Adela, and then I had a wife. And trying to manage all of the work stuff on top of the dad stuff and the husband stuff with now being, in essence, a form of father figure to my mom and my brother now was a pretty hefty burden. But it was something that I was dedicated to. The depth of love that I have for these people is, knows no ends. I was there. I showed up. 10 months after losing dad, Jesse, my brother, had moved in with my mom at their house in St. Albert, which I was horrified of, just, strictly because you look at two individuals who are on this path for self-destruction, and now they're moving in together, and this enabling aspect of things. And so I knew it was a bad idea, but by that point, my mom and I had a falling out. She'd become so paranoid after my dad had died that because I was the executor of the estate, I was in charge of trying to get all of the estate managed and get the money over to mom. But because my dad died in the way he did, he died in a lake, so we never found his body. We had to prove to the courts that dad was in fact dead. So it takes time. So, mom and I started struggling. She started thinking that I was embezzling funds from her. So we called it quits. I called her one day. She told me that she was going to try and sue me. So I called her up after a conversation with my therapist and said, you and I are done. I can't deal with trying to take care of you and trying to take care of Jess while you're trying to sue me. And then lo and behold, 10 months after dad had died, they moved in together, and Jesse one day had gotten into an argument with my mom, went downstairs and smashed through a plate glass table in my mom's basement and severed his carotid artery and bled out on the floor in the basement. And my mom was so scared of my brother at that point because, he could be a pretty interesting drunk. I mean, he could be mean. And so she hid in her bedroom. She just thought that he was breaking a bunch of shit in the basement. Turns out he had fallen through the plate glass table. So he passed away. So then it was mom and I, right? Now it's just me and mom. And okay, I lost dad. I felt that it was my responsibility to ensure that I could take care of Jesse the way that he needed. And now Jesse's dead. So now it's a matter of just trying to ensure that I'm looking after my mom. We had a lot of repair to do for our relationship, and I wasn't certain that we were going to be able to accomplish that. But 2 days after Jesse's funeral, it was my birthday, and I just turned 31. And mom was at the condo that I had just bought for her. I moved her out of the house. Time to get the hell out of that fucking house. Just too much disaster, too much tragedy, too many memories. Wanted a fresh start for her, so I moved her into a condo that was a couple blocks from our home. And I got the call from my then wife, Jill, that my mother had fallen off a stool and broken her humerus. So she was at the U of A hospital. Time to get over to the hospital. I was at the office at the time because I didn't want to celebrate my birthday. I just wanted to get some work done and kind of be left alone for a little while. So I drove over to the hospital, and man, I'll never forget this. Opening up that curtain, I hadn't seen my mom smile in a couple of years, if not more. She was really low. She was also profoundly manic depressive. And so she was an interesting lady because you take manic depression with a bunch of SSRIs and that cocktail and then throw in a bunch of Oxycontin and things get pretty lively. And I peeled back the curtain and there's mom. and she's sitting upright in the hospital bed, and she's got this big grin on her face, which was strange given the circumstances. So I asked her, what's going on? And what happened? And she told me I fell off the stool and, I was on too much oxy and I broke my arm. And then she pulls her blanket back and shows me her arm, and it just looks like a piece of spaghetti. I mean, just wild looking. And I'm thinking, how the hell are you not screaming in agony? And Mom, she goes on to tell me, honey, I don't want you to worry too much, because on the ambulance ride over, I sat and spoke with your brother and your father. And they said that everything's going to be all right. But they did tell me that it's probably time to get off of OxyContin. And I'm sitting there looking at her like, huh? You rode here with my deceased father and brother and had this conversation. So the doctor walks in, and I turn to the doctor. I'm like, what is this woman on? She's not on oxy. Like, I know what it's like on morphine. She ain't on morphine. And the doctor looks at me and goes, yeah, maybe come outside. So I go out into the hallway with him, and he goes, yeah, so your mom's on so much oxy that if we gave her more morphine, we'll kill her. So we gave her ketamine. And I didn't know what ketamine was at the time. He explained to me that, it's a profound painkiller, but it also has hallucinogenic properties. And so she had this really vivid experience of seeing my family. And after that day, she ended up moving into a hospital for 4 months to be cared for, to rebuild her arm and her shoulder. And when she was released, she dedicated herself to getting off of OxyContin. And it took us 2 years for her to do that. But she ended up getting off, which is something that I never thought I would see my entire life. My mom had been on oxy by that point ever since I was a kid, so I was so used to my mom being this way. And, all of a sudden my mom starts coming back to me, and we start building this relationship, and she becomes my mom again, like my mom was a rock star mother, and all of a sudden I get her back, and what a miracle that is. And so, she and I became very, very close. She became my daughter's favorite thing in the world, which is something you always hope for. And then I quit being a stockbroker. I started a company called Holos, which was in corporate wellness. And I got my first big client, and they had power plants all over the state. So they were sending me to these power plants to teach wellness to these guys in North Carolina. Okay. So big rig dudes who are coming into this space, and never forget one guy walking in and looking at me. His name is Bo. And Bo was 340, 350, no problem. He was a big man. And he walks into this trailer where I'm going to teach him breath work and meditation. And he looks at me and he goes, it's I forgot my Lululemons. Ha 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 ha. I'm like, oh, God, this is the crew. But I got to work with these guys, and they ended up being just salt of the earth, best guys in the world. And so while I was working out there, I noticed that I was having trouble reaching my mom. And she had caught a cold while I was leaving. And so I was checking in on her to see how she was doing. And, my conversations with her were good enough. She seemed fine. But then all of a sudden she wasn't responding to phone calls. So we ended up sending our nanny over to see my mom just to check in on her. And my nanny ended up finding my mom, who had passed away in her bed. She had developed pneumonia, and it had it 6 times previous. And this was the last time. So it ended up taking her life. And, now it's just me, and I have to figure out what I'm meant to do with all this. And so for a good period of time, I was profoundly unwell. Didn't want to admit that shit. You know what I mean? That man thing. Don't worry, I'm good.
That was exactly what I was going to ask too, Cody, was what was modeled to you was suck it up and be a man, air quotes. And so, yeah, how did you overcome that? What did you tell yourself? Where did you go?
Yeah, I did suck it up. I was pretending to be a man. It was not working. I was doing everything that I could to try to ensure that people didn't really know just how much I was struggling. I didn't want people to know. But I started having these nightmares every night, and these just the most horrific nightmares. And I started having visions in the middle of the day. I'd be sitting in the middle of a meeting and just have this thought come out of nowhere and completely derail me of, danger, and especially as it pertained to Adela. My amygdala was locked into this fight or flight response because of the scenarios and trauma that I had just recently endured, one compounded after the other. And so my brain was starting to fail me. But that was the scariest thing because I didn't know who to talk to. I was seeing a therapist, but even with a therapist, I really wasn't letting him in to just how bad things were getting. So my whole treatment methodology during that time was, I know that if I drink enough alcohol, I can kill my REM sleep. So I started drinking every night. I drank a tumbler or two of whiskey in an attempt to try to quell the nightmares that I was having. But sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. But at least there was some form of reprieve from the dreams every now and again. So I continued with that method for a while, which was not working. Obviously, it was getting worse and worse. And now I'm not getting any sleep either. So things are getting hairy. And then I got this phone call from my aunt telling me that she's going to come into town from Calgary and have lunch with me because it was my mom's birthday and she wanted to celebrate my mom's birthday with me. So Wendy comes into town and she was a mental health practitioner out of Calgary, well-respected woman. And I'm kind of thinking, oh, fuck, I just know that she's going to put me on the couch. And she's like, last one, you know what I mean? This is the last lady on earth that I want to really talk to. I mean, I love her to pieces, but smart lady. So I put my game face on and go for lunch with her. And as we're talking, she asked me to, just simple questions about the day before. I had completely forgotten what the day before was. I didn't know what I did. I had no idea what I did 24 hours previous. She thought that was kind of interesting. Started talking to me about post-traumatic stress disorder, which, we were at a time when, and still are to a certain extent, where everybody's talking about trauma and everybody's talking about PTSD. And I didn't want to be that. I just wanted to move on with my life. I wanted people to see me the way they saw my father, as this pillar of strength. So I just didn't want them to know. I didn't want Wendy to know. I didn't want to. I'd spent enough time in my degrees in psychology. Like, I know what PTSD is. And I knew that I was struggling with it to some extent or another, but I just repressed the ever-loving hell out of it. So I didn't have to deal with it. But when Wendy caught me, she forced me to go and do a psychological evaluation for PTSD, which I did because, my aunt, I don't want to face her fury. She was a tough gal. I was like, okay, went and did the evaluation, sat down with a psychologist. He did it for me. And then, I'll never forget the psychologist coming back in the room and he sits down and he looks at me and he whistles. Like, that's the last thing you want to hear from your shrink. It's like, holy shit. So, so then I was told I got to take time away from Holos and I got to take 3 months off and start going through trauma therapy, EMDR, and did that for a little while. Started doing walking meditations as well, which seemed to help somewhat, but the sting, the kind of the immensity of my circumstances and the PTSD that I was dealing with was so strong that I still wasn't getting much reprieve from it. And I was a board member for the Mental Health Foundation at the time, and I had to take a step back from that as well. And I ended up talking to my buddy, Mark Kwadcast, who is the executive director of the Mental Health Foundation at the time, and just a beautiful guy in his own right. And he passed me this book, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, which I hugely recommend. That book is absolutely incredible. And in fact, they've now made a Netflix series, so you can watch it too, but it's remarkable. Michael Pollan, I owe a lot to. Upon reading the book, there was this entry in there about psychedelics and psychotherapy, and especially for PTSD, was talking about the efficacy of MDMA treatment. And studies have been done by Harvard and Johns Hopkins about just how effective it was. I had actually been told at this point by a number of individuals that what I really needed to do instead of going to talk therapy was just to, grab a bunch of psychedelics. And I thought, well, I'm not really interested in partying right now. I didn't understand the power and potency of it, but it was, it was put in front of me on a number of occasions. This time it came from a guy who is Michael Pollan, so this is the first time that I'm reading this from somebody who's like a scholar and is supporting with evidence. So, I called up a friend of mine who was MAPS certified, MAPS being the main psychological institution or psychedelic institution on the planet right now. And asked him, do you have any MDMA on you? And can we try to fix this? And he said, yeah. His name is Hank, and a beautiful man, that boy. So I ended up going over to his place. In fact, strangely, he was living in my mom's condo now. So I went and did psychedelic therapy in my mother's condo with a brother of mine, which I can't imagine a better place to do this kind of work. So marched over to mom's place, met Hank, took a clinical dose of MDMA and went for a stroll. Once the drugs kicked in, it settled me completely. It's like finally there was something that could shut my amygdala off, and my fight or flight response just vanished. And I felt, I've talked to hundreds of people at this point about psychedelics and their application, what that experience was like for me. But for me, when I took MDMA that first time, it felt like I was normal, like I could just walk around this world and not fear that something tragic was about to take place. I was going to lose my life. I was going to watch Adela lose hers. It just wasn't in my mind anymore. All of a sudden, the sky is this beautiful, vibrant blue. The grass is green, and I'm focused on that. I'm focused on just how gorgeous this planet is for the first time forever. And that allowed me to just speak openly about my place in all of this. And I had shouldered this incredible amount of guilt for losing them all the way that I did. I felt like it was my job, right, to keep these people alive. This is my family, and these are my most prized people on earth. And they all got sick, and they all needed help, and I wasn't enough. And to go through that experience and not walk away with some feelings of like, how the fuck did you let that happen? That would have been impossible for me. I carried this brick in my backpack for a long time. And finally, I was able to kind of logically look at it and look what I had done to do whatever I could to try to keep them healthy and happy and living, And that was such an incredible experience, because all of a sudden I just let go, I just let go of it. I never had another nightmare after that. Never had another vision either. It's not that it cured me of my PTSD necessarily, but the sting of my PTSD was completely gone. Like I still had things to deal with, and I still, had to deal with, the trauma of losing them, but it wasn't this kind of ferocious thing anymore. So yeah, it was an experience for sure. It was very interesting.
Man, I mean, Cody, like, hearing the journey, as I said in the beginning, most people that go through all this, to be honest with you, they're not here having a conversation like you and I are having. And I mean, it says a lot about your disposition. It says a lot about how you're willing to be vulnerable. And I mean, the reason I really wanted you on the show was because some of these things that you've overcome, a lot of us can draw lessons from. As an example, in our book, we talk a lot about the need for purpose, the need
Yes.
for community. And what seemed to resonate with me as I was reading the book, and once again, everyone should read this, I don't give a fuck, is that how much you like eventually, whether it's Longship directly or not, but how much you leaned into your network, your community, and how much that purpose that you had really was enough to keep you going. And so I really think you have something special about you to see that. But yeah, maybe just speak to that a little bit about how that seemed to help you along the way when you have to deal with these crazy circumstances.
Yeah, thanks, Quad. And, for me, this kind of circles back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast. There was a ton of tragedy that was going on, but I also had this miracle of this group of guys around me. Friends of mine, close friends of mine, who, even though I didn't want them to know how I was doing, they just never left my side. Never. Your boy Ryan Collins is one of those.
RC Cola.
Yeah.
Shout out to RC.
Like Rye, God bless him. He's been one of my single greatest friends in my life for a long time now. And I had him with me during a lot of the shit, a lot of the fallout after mom's death. And the same thing for, John Trapp is another guy who is another founder of Longship. Rye and John and another friend of mine, Mark Devine, we created this thing together. But it came about because of the utility of community in dealing with trauma and damage. When these things happen in isolation, it's so much more dangerous. When you have to go through this truly alone and you don't have a community to lean on, like that makes this job 1,000 times more complicated, more difficult, more challenging. Gratefully, I had these guys who walked in lockstep with me to try and get me through this, and always checking in. How you doing, brother? You doing okay? Do you need anything? Let's get together. Let's hang out. Come over for dinner. That was constant. And so because of that experience, after the MDMA therapy, about a year, maybe a year and a half later, something like that, Ryan had undergone some psychedelic therapy in BC. And so when he came home, he tells the story of how he drives out there and he's got road rage and people are pissing him off in traffic. And then when he came back home, he was doing like 50 on the highway and like whistling. So
I cannot picture that.
I've seen it.
Oh my
I know
God.
it's an experience. So Rye comes back from this experience and says, listen, I just went through this whole experience with this psychedelic guide out in BC. If you're up for it, if you're willing, why don't we bring her out to Kananaskis and meet her in Kananaskis and undergo her therapy so that you can deal with the grief of it all? Because now that the PTSD is gone, now I have to focus on, okay, shit, like I really haven't spent any time just missing my family because I'd been so locked in to this mindset of holy shit, like what's going on? And now that that's faded away, now it's like, oh my God, like I miss my family bad. So we went out to Kananaskis, met the psychedelic therapist, and she proceeded to run me through a therapy session with now MDMA and acid. So we threw a combo together and allowed the MDMA to settle in, put the acid in, and then started some talk therapy, just, what's going on, what happened, run me through this stuff. And at one point, this went on for hours. And at one point, she had me just sit in this meditative stance and listen to music. She turned on this tribal music, beautiful music, and had me close my eyes and meditate. And when I did, I found myself in the middle of the ocean on a Longship, which is a Viking vessel, which is weird considering I'm mostly Norwegian. And so, that was a fucking strange experience. I'm looking around and it's like as real as this. Like it was, I swear I was there. It was the strangest experience. And I'm sitting in this boat and I'm looking around and like all my brothers who were by my side during this whole experience were in the boat with me and we're all just rowing. Nobody's saying it. No one's saying a word. No one's saying a single word. They're just laughing and smiling and we're all just rowing and it's storming. It's just piss and rain. We're going after it, having a gay old time out for a row in the middle of the ocean. And I just, it felt like that hallucination, that vision went on for hours and hours and hours. But realistically, it was probably, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that. But as we're rowing, it's just this lightness of, I lost family, but look at my brothers. Like, look at these brothers. Like, aren't you blessed? And I came out of that hallucination with this deep, deep sense of gratitude of, okay, all right, my family is gone. This is true. However, flip side of that coin is I am so lucky to have this group of guys. Like, God bless these people. They're right here. And they were rowing through the shit with me the entire time. And sometimes I wasn't wholly aware of it because I was so locked into this, oh my God, kind of scenario. Now I was hyper aware. So that experience just kind of shaved another few grams off that brick. And this brick is getting tinier and tinier. But eventually you got to ask yourself, what are you going to do with this? And gratefully, mine presented itself by way of a executive retreat that I was hosting out in San Diego for this organization, big construction firm here in town. And so the executive had asked me if I could create this experience for them. 4-day retreat out at the Fairmont in San Diego, beautiful, beautiful location. And as one of the guest speakers, I hired a guy by the name of Mark Devine. And Mark is a retired Navy SEAL commander. He is a best-selling author, like 4 or 5 times over. This guy's pedigree is, and that just kind of touches the surface of what this man has accomplished in his life. And so I decided, this is the perfect guy to speak to the executive because they're looking for, instruction on partnerships and teamwork and being a team and leading that team. And what does that look like? So who better to bring in than a Navy SEAL commander? And sure as shit, Mark walks in looking, like hair high and tight, looks the part. And he and I had breakfast before his talk. I just I don't know, sometimes you meet, it's like meeting you. Like the first time I met you, Quad, I just like, you're a brother of mine. Like there's unquestionably, like you're one of mine. It was the same experience with Mark. I had breakfast with him, like, holy shit, do I love this guy. This guy's incredible. Like he's just easy and casual and funny, witty, smart, and totally different from what I was expecting. So he gives this speech about the importance of your emotional mastery and mastering your mind and discipline. And this was at the height of COVID and hashtag Me Too and Black Lives Matter and a bunch of social unrest. And so, the world was in such a weird place. And men were in a really weird place. And I knew a lot of guys back home who were struggling still and not talking. And so when he said these words of like, you have to own your emotions, but you also have to lean on your brothers, your sisters, side to side, and have that community with you. And it spoke so loudly to me that I chased him out of the fucking hotel, saying like, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but we're gonna work together. Mark's looking at me like, okay, Canadian, like, all right, just whatever. And he said, I've got this mission in my life to positively impact 100 million lives before I'm in the dirt. And if you can help me with that, then let's talk. Came back home, started conversations with John Trapp and Ryan Collins just about what this could be, this experience that I had, this guy that I met, and then a few months later, we flew out to Encinitas to present Longship to Mark and say, like, this is what we want to do. And this is what it looks like. Obviously, we named it Longship because of, the vision that I had. And it's a pretty perfect metaphor for guys, We row through shit together and get in the fucking boat. It's okay. You got a community somewhere. There's no reason that you need to be alone, even if you feel it. There is a home out there for you. And now we've been running Longship we worked on it for a year and then launched it. So we're coming up on 2 years of Longship now and over 2 years, as a matter of fact. So time goes by quick. But, now we've got this community of guys. We've got 40 members here in Edmonton that are working with us. We're remodeling to a certain extent our approach because there's been so much outpouring of individuals that would like to have this, that don't have this, but they're in, locations that we can't get to yet. So we're building an online component to it now. We want to try to keep as much face-to-face aspect as humanly possible, but we live in a digital age and it's just the way it is. So how do we combine both of that digital aspect plus ensuring that we get, the kind of camaraderie that comes only when you can actually sit and talk to people, right? So it's a privileged position that we're in. We've been running this for a while now, and it's looking cooler and better. And I get to be in this crazy position where I just get to meet remarkable men all the fucking time. Like that's my life, is just being surrounded by like guys who are doing the work, who are committed to doing the work, who want to work through their shit as a community, who have grit and endurance and resiliency, but they're seeking that community. They're seeking some education. They need a little bit of help. Because let's face it, we all do. There's no getting around it. Like this world can be a lonely place. So,
And what do you think has changed? We probably used to do. Our parents probably used to do this, like at least connect with guys more. But I'll say this: as a middle-aged dude, like it's not that easy making friends anymore. You don't. You get busy with your kids. Many of us, I'm even speaking to this in Florida soon about how we fail to connect and often lean on our spouses too much. Like they're our everything, our business advisor, our confidant, our therapist. And that's a lot of burden. And I guess my question is, do you feel something has changed, or has it always been like this, that we had a tough time connecting this stage of life? What do you think got us here?
Well, I don't think this helped. Like this hasn't
Oh,
helped
yeah.
us none. We've
Looking
been
at his
fooled
cell
by
phone
the
for those that
idea.
are audio.
What's that, Quad?
Oh, I was just explaining that he just pulled out his cell phone just for the audio folk.
Oh, yeah. Social media has duped us into this idea by calling, these connections online friends, that this is your new community. These are your friends. I mean, a friendship is something deep. And a friendship is also something that's earned, like it's not just freely given. You gotta earn the trust and faith of the other individual. You gotta build bonds. And we have so much disconnect in this world because we don't do what we used to do. We don't host block parties anymore. Like when I was a kid, it was block parties every second or third week. during the summertime. And now, like, it just doesn't really happen. The community doesn't get together like that to just meet and hang out. I just moved, interestingly enough, I was living in Edmonton for the last 20 years, but I got remarried to just, my other half, my spirit. I don't have the words to describe Elaine, but, she's like a female version of me, but better. And so she convinced me to move back to St. Albert. And I actually live a couple blocks away from my old home, which I never thought I would ever do. But it's cool because this community does still do block parties and stuff. Like, the neighbors know each other. People talk to each other. And it's jarring because living in Edmonton, there was none of that. Like, that we don't create experiences so that people can connect anymore. And we need to desperately, because we are social creatures and we don't have that connection. It has profound implications for our mental health. And we're seeing this play out right now. So, it's too bad. But I think the good news is it seems like there's a recognition of this now, and that things are starting to move forward in a healthier manner by way of, especially this younger generation. I'm starting to see them recognize that, like, this isn't
I'm
good.
spooked out about the younger generation, dog. Like, I gotta say, they don't drink. I'm not sure if they party as much. Male and female, like, you see them just on their phones at functions, not necessarily talking to each other. They're less wanting to go out that I can see. I do
Yeah.
see a lot of, like, a little bit more balance in terms of, hey, I do want a work-life balance. I don't want to, like,
Yeah.
work myself to the ground, but the connection side is what I worry a little bit about with the youth, and I I don't know. I mean, we're all raising kids here, and I'm just hoping that they see the value of that connection side. Because what you're describing is what I miss about E-Town. To be honest with you, it's like I don't miss the weather. I miss my Oilers, but I miss the people. Like, the way it's just easy. Like,
Yeah.
you come into a party, you come into a bar, whatever. You shoot the shit about the oil, talk about the account, whatever it might be. There's a genuineness in the
Yes.
air.
Yes.
I think there's something powerful about that, and I'm sure this is what Longship is like when you walk in the door. Is that you do feel that ease, the genuineness. Guys are coming in unfiltered. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that is supreme magic sauce.
Yeah. You know, I got 4 kids. I have 3 stepsons, and just give me 1 second here, Quad. My cat is trying to enter into my room and is destroying things.
No, it's all good.
Hang tight. Yeah, the way that I've seen my kids interact, I'm heartened to see that they have a community, they have a group of friends that they seem to be very, very close to, which is good to see. I totally get your concern, obviously, on the screen time aspect of things, because your online community is not your community. It's just a group of people that you don't really know, that every now and again you talk to and play a game. It doesn't bring about the same quality of communication. It doesn't really have that depth. But I don't know, I've got a lot of hope for this generation, because I also watch them do things that, they're way more health conscious
100%.
than I was.
100%.
I mean, the amount of partying that I did when I was a kid is almost disgusting. And then I look at my kids and no, like, it's just not for them. They have very little interest of going out, getting shit-faced, doing something stupid. I mean, thus far, fingers are crossed. But they've been very responsible. And it's really, really, it's cool to see. And so I'm hoping that, and we got to lead this, by the way. I mean, it's on us, this generation, to start creating scenarios such that these kids can come together. It's not good enough for us to just leave them to their own devices and let them run it. We need to step in. And that's one of the conversations that we keep having at Longship is, it's great that we're doing this as men, but what are we doing for the next generation? Like, what does that look like? And how can they participate in this in terms of community? So it's something that we're definitely working on, but it is on us to create these experiences for them. We got to get behind that 8 ball a little bit more.
I like that. And it's a nice call to action, to be honest with you. It's something that I think most of us, even if we're not motivated, like, maybe we have a little bit of inertia with it, but that call to action of getting together, like, face to face. Also,
Yeah.
pick up the phone. Fuck the text sometimes. Like, just, I do that. I'm not sure it's well received, but I don't give a fuck still. I'll call up RC out of the blue. I'll call up my boys out of the blue and just be like, yo, I got something to run by you. But I think maybe just from a personal experience too, just that the need for connection, I feel like it's there, and I think when you experience it, I just feel it's just something you could feel like you're lacking it, you're missing
Yeah.
it, you know,
Yeah.
because when I don't know, I'm trying to think of an analogy of you don't miss it till you don't till it's gone kind of thing, and but when you experience it, when you're in the presence of something that's so meaningful. Like I think of this is an example. I think about the first time I went to a conference post pandemic, like in person,
Yeah.
and sitting there hearing a guy speak, or even better, when you went to your first concert or first couple concerts post pandemic, it's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, we've been missing this. Or another one that came to mind was seeing my boy play a hockey game full of stands for the first time in a long time during the during the pandemic, and I got emotional. I was like, this is
Of
what we're
course.
here for. This is what it is all about. And as you said, we get tied up in saying, yo, I'm texting Elroy, I'm fucking got a couple likes on this post or whatever, and we think that's satisfying. And it is not. It's not of substance. It's all superficial. And Longship and yourself is overcoming this. And I gotta say, it's been a privilege from my end doing even the small little bits that I've got to see. Like this is gonna be powerful shit, and I know it is because anytime I bring up the idea or the concept to a group of guys or individually, they all like they reposition themselves. They look you more intensely in the eye, and they're like, "Tell me more. What's this all about?" You know what I'm saying? So I think this path, Cody, is definitely on point.
Thanks, Quad. Yeah, I mean, we certainly feel that way. There's, there's a tremendous amount of purpose in this. There's a need. The need is great. And it's like you said, just coming out of that amount of isolation that the pandemic introduced, and then being able to see your friends again. I think most people that had that experience of, that overwhelm of emotion of holy shit, like I know I needed community and I know I needed connection, but I didn't realize the extent of it until I lost it. And when it came back into my life, it was this same kind of thing where it's just this, you get tearful because it's this thing that you didn't really know you needed this bad, and the rush of endorphins that you get from that experience and just the way that it impacts your mind and your mental health. It's the best vitamin that you can introduce to your brain as far as I'm concerned.
100%, 100%. Listen, couple things, Cody, because we're up against it a little bit. But what what would it be like as you're I don't know 42-year-old guy out in St. Albert and they're hearing this pod and they're telling themselves Longship sounds cool. What would they expect walking through the door? Like what can you expect in terms of experience as a new Longship member?
Well, first and foremost, you're going to be welcomed with open arms. I mean, this is an incredible group of men who this and a warm community. Like the whole intention, we've had this obviously over the last few years, is when the guys walk in, they are immediately met as like, "Hey, brother," like welcome to Longship. It's we have a big ask. We tell these guys, when we're doing our work together, whether it's doing council meetings once a month or when we're building out these new retreats right now that are going to be so fucking cool. So, I want you on every single one of them, Quad, because you're going to love this shit. But, when we're developing these experiences, the whole intention, whether we're sitting around in a men's circle and diving deep into our own personal shit, or we're out on a retreat and enduring something that is really remarkable, adventurous, and cool. The whole intention is to bind these guys together to create this community. And there is no wrong human being for the most part that comes into this. All we ask is that you come in authentically and you be yourself and you give of yourself so that we can all work as a community together. But it's a very warm, embracing place. It's a good spot.
I love it.
Yeah.
Listen, before I forget, and we'll figure out how people can learn more about Longship and where they could get the book. Lane, I don't say I haven't said this much in my life. I could say this confidently. There's something special about your old lady, man. I got to meet her once. She had this aura about her, this calming presence, this genuine smile. Like she just exuded love and compassion. And like I said, I don't say this about too many folk because and I don't know her. Like, we don't know each other. We've got to talk for half an hour there, but there's something special there. Like, I think I
Yeah.
it's tough to actually articulate. I don't think I'm articulating it well, but there's something special about your old lady and hearing the way you feel about her, but also seeing how you look at her. It was really remarkable and gives me faith in the world that there like real connection and love can exist.
Yeah.
Not that we don't
She's,
have this, mommy, just in case you're listening. I love you too, Mama Bear. But just like, uh, I don't know. I might have been reading into it too much there, but it just felt like she's a spark. That's for sure.
as much as I owe a lot of my healing to my brothers, a tremendous bulk of that healing goes to this woman. Like the patience that she had to have with me, while we were dating. I've known her for most of my life, but, she went through a divorce. I went through a divorce. We ended up getting together. And from the first date, she was just this thing where it was like, no, just give me your pain and it's okay. Like, you can tell me anything. We can talk about all of it and you will never receive any semblance of judgment from me. You just, I think it's got to be one of the first times ever that I've really, really experienced that level of unconditional love apart from my own family. This woman just met me where I needed to be met. And she's my everything. Like, this is one of the most, she's a saint. She's an unreal woman. And you're not the first person to say that, by the way. Like,
Really? Seriously?
but yeah, she gets that a lot. Like, there's something about your wife. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I fucking married her. So you guys need to fuck off.
Oh my God. Yeah. Stay away, guys.
Right.
We're not that tight of a community, motherfucker. Listen,
Exactly.
Code, where can people find the book? Where can they learn more about Longship? All the things.
For Longship, just hop online, www.longshipmen.com, and you'll find everything that you need to know. We're revamping the website right now. We're going to launch that relatively soon. But if you're eager to find out more about us right now, just hop on the website. And then as it pertains to the book, Amazon. Hop on Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, type Longship Book or Longship Cody Lakevold, and you'll find me. Book's on there.
Yeah, and leave a review, kids. This is a great book. Like I said, I don't read for shit, but this one I could not stop. It was amazing. Cody, keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, brother.
You are making a big difference in this world. You and Mark, as you mentioned about the 100 million lives, this is attainable. This is within your grasp. And I know it's affected me. And I'm leaving this podcast invigorated. I'm motivated to continue to create those connections. And like I say, you're an inspiration. So thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me on, brother. I really appreciate seeing you. And, when you're back in E-Town, obviously drop me a line.
Anytime, man. Anytime.